Hello and welcome to the big picture. The decision of the NDA government to scrap the Planning Commission and bring in its place an alternative body has received mixed response. The meeting of chief ministers and lieutenant governors of various states called yesterday by Prime Minister Narendra Modi did not see a consensus on the issue. While the BJP-ruled states as well as some of the non-Congress and non-BJP-ruled states was with the plan to scrap the commission, Congress chief ministers as well as some others have opposed its scrapping while demanding a reorientation and restructuring if necessary. However, the government seems to be determined to do away with the Planning Commission as we have known it since it was set up in 1950. What is it that the government will have as an alternative? What will this new body be mandated with and how will it be different from the Planning Commission? Or will the government work out a compromise? We will discuss all this today with an eminent panel of guests. I have with me N.K. Singh, former Planning Commission member and a BJP member now. Dr. Bhalchandra Mungekar, also a former Planning Commission member and a Congress MP. Tapan, CPI-M MP. And Paranjoy Guha, Thakurta, senior journalist and economic analyst. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Singh, I would like to come to you first. The government seems to be determined to change this whole setup, have a new body. Is this a final decision, and does the government have a clear idea of what it will have as an alternative?
Well, I think that as far as the decision is concerned, the decision to abolish the Planning Commission in its present form, that has already been taken. So I think that we are now basically discussing the alternative structure which would replace the erstwhile Planning Commission. Now, as far as I believe that the Planning Commission had three important functions, which Bhalchandra Mungekar would also know very well.
Yes.
The first is that in respect of finalizing the state plans and the additional central plan assistance was an annual feature which the Planning Commission performed. Second, it performed the important task of a link between the center and the states.
Right.
The third important function was to be an overarching guide to the states and the center in respect of allocation of resources to different ministries for approved plan schemes.
Right.
Now, as far as the first function is concerned, that function already has been substantially transferred to the Ministry of Finance. The new Planning Commission will essentially, I believe, perform three important functions. This is in line with what the Prime Minister has said repeatedly. First, to create a body which would really act as a genuine fostering of partnership between the center and the states in the spirit of operative fiscal federalism. And I think that the provision for this already exists in the Constitution. The Constitution had visualized the creation of a center-state council for purposes of a linkage between the center and the states. This largely remained inactive. And I think the first important activity would be to create a mechanism for a dialogue between the center and the states, and therefore the need to reactivate the Center-State Council as part of the functions of the newly created Planning Commission. The second is the important function of acting as a strategic think tank in order to invest and inform the decision-making process of ideas, innovations, strategy for both short and medium term. And finally, I think that the Planning Commission would really also perform the function of the new mechanism for transfer of cash in terms of the unique identification scheme and in terms of monitoring projects. I think that whatever be the structure of the Planning Commission, new Planning Commission, whatever is the nomenclature which might be given to the new Planning Commission, I do believe that these three important functions would be integral to the new setup, and that the routine function of allocation of financial resources, which to some extent hurt the autonomy of the states, prevented the flexibility of the states, believed in one size fits all, done away with, for those functions being given to the Ministry of Finance, while it concentrates on the three other critical functions which I have just mentioned.
Okay. Dr. Mungekar, you think what Mr. N.K. Singh is talking about, which means that, what he's talking about is merging various existing bodies like the Interstate Council, Planning Commission, UIADI, very interestingly what he mentioned. So, and a few other departments. You think that is the way to go ahead?
I think the Prime Minister has started in reverse manner. 3.5 months ago, that is on 15th of August, he declared first that the planning commission will be scrapped. And 3.5 months later, he convened yesterday the meeting of the chief minister to seek the consensus. This is absolutely unacceptable to me. Second, NK explained in elaborate manner, that's why I don't want to go into that. But he did not take the position. I am opposed totally to dismantling of the planning commission. Having worked for 5 years like NK, I think whatever now NK decided and discussed, all these functions could have been reinvented in the planning commission. Rather than dismantling the planning commission and in its place bringing new body, which government doesn't know at all, because you are destroying the old house without having the remote idea of what kind of new house would be. Under these conditions, whatever now NK Singh, my good friend, mentioned, all these functions could have been subsumed in the existing planning commission. In fact, after 1991, we take into account when the state has slowly started withdrawing from the governance and economic affairs of the state, planning commission started getting slowly diluted. That's why the question is, there was some overarching body. You know to what extent Nehru had to suppose the opposition from person like Patel. Nehru was singularly in the Congress party who stood for his decision, and he said, in order to have certain coordinated development, balanced regional development, and some coordinated picture, planning commission like agency is necessary. Now BJP is talking of cooperative federalism. What kind of
cooperative federalism, fiscal federalism?
It is just in Dennis Roberts, it is just empty box. After 15th March 1950, till today, planning commission has survived for 64 years, and always states were taken into consideration. Mr. Narendra Modi should know, during his 17-year tenure as the Prime Minister, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru wrote 5,000 letters to the Chief Minister for each and everything. The only question is that the Planning Commission, since I worked and I know the limitations of the Planning Commission, one important limitation was, too important, administratively, senior retired IAS officers after getting retired where the Planning Commission was the parking lot, that I was totally against. No domain knowledge of the particular area. And the second important point was, largely Planning Commission was evolving a scheme, one scheme for all, one jacket for all. I was again for that. And I was, since beginning I was saying, let us have to give one flexibility. I will just give half minute. When we started Rajiv Gandhi with Gramin Vidyutikaran Yojana, Planning Commission decided that 500 population is necessary to give that benefit of that scheme. I said that it is not possible because tribal village is not comprising of 500.
Right.
You make it 300. That's why all these new changes that the BJP government is wanting, that Mr. Narendra Modi wanting, it is quite possible to restructure, revolve and reorienting the Planning Commission. Now they are quoting Dr. Manmohan Singh very wrongly.
Yes.
When Dr. Manmohan Singh said, he did not mean dismantling the Planning Commission. He said
did.
that we should reorient the Planning Commission.
Absolutely.
And the reorientation in Planning Commission is different from the dismantle of the Planning Commission.
Okay. I would have, Mr. Singh, would you like to quickly react to what he said?
Well, I think that, frankly speaking, it is quite unfortunate that the issue of the Planning Commission is being unduly politicized and in terms of reflecting some of the personal predilections and biases of members depending on the political party to which they belong. But I think that the most important thing which we need to consider is that when India began its economic liberalization in 1991, the Indian economy restructured itself. The Planning Commission was frozen in time.
No, that is not the point.
Two very important changes
Singh,
which have taken place in the economy since 1991.
No, Mr. Singh, sorry.
Let me just add one thing, Bhalchandra.
No, I have a small question. You can add that also. My question is, as Dr. Mungekar says, that the existing Planning Commission can subsume some of these new ideas, some of the ideas which you are talking about, your Prime Minister is talking about. Is it not possible to do it within the structure? You think the dismantling of the entire structure is necessary to create a new one?
Well, I think because the changes are so fundamental that it would not have been possible to bring about these changes by mere restructuring
what are
of the
these
Planning
fundamental
Commission.
changes?
Also, I think that when the Planning Commission
what are these
initially
fundamental
set up...
Sir, fundamental changes. What are these fundamental changes?
Mention two.
With the first fundamental change which is necessary is that the allocation of financial resources instead of being done to the states by the Planning Commission and to the ministry, these functions being assigned to the Ministry of Finance. The second important is the fundamental change. The Centre State Council currently is under the administrative charge of the Ministry of Home Affairs. Their functions need to be enlarged substantially, which are not possible within the existing parameters of the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Thirdly, I think that the other functions which are, so lot of functions to be deleted, many new functions to be added, which are not possible without the scrapping of the Planning Commission as a whole.
So when you're talking of fundamental changes in the economy, actually you're talking about what are the shortcomings of the Planning Commission. I'll come back to you. Tapan Das, Tapan Singh Gupta.
You see, I look into in a bit different manner. The reorientation of Planning Commission was required. Dr. Singh also told about. And actually he started...
Yesterday's meeting, almost every chief minister agrees that there has to be a restructuring of the Planning Commission.
Yes.
It is over.
That it has not catered to the changing needs of the Indian economy is something which everybody seems to agree on.
The thing is that I look it in a different manner. Reorientation was talked about by Dr. Singh.
Right.
Actually, the reorientation started soon. The time these new policies were piloted by Dr. Singh as a finance minister.
Right.
And that also coincides with the process of diluting the role of Planning Commission, which indeed play a very important role in the post-independence Indian industrialization and economic expansion. Indeed, there are many shortcomings, but indeed it played a role. And so that dilution started. Today, Mr. Modi's scrapping is a natural culmination of a process which started, undermining the importance of the state's role in moderating and monitoring the development process in a developing country like ours.
Just one point, Tapan. The argument is since liberalization, since 1991, the nature of economy has changed. There is a lot of economic activity which happens outside the government that doesn't seem to be taken into consideration in the planning process, and so that is one of the most important things which needs to be looked at.
Number one, the things happening outside in the private domain.
Right.
Planning Commission's requirement becomes much more important so that the overall direction of the development is properly monitored and they can play a role in pointing out the shortcomings, deficit, and also suggesting a proper focus where the whole effort should go. In liberalization, it makes more important for the state to play a calibrating role so that it goes as per the priorities of the national development. So here, I think the importance of Planning Commission increases further. But the whole neoliberal process has got its natural certain trends, which goes to the centralization and concentration of power. So, you see the state's allocation, financial allocation, just for example, the Planning Commission had been a platform to talk on that for the purpose of finality. Just a minute. Yes. It has got a democratic content, but for the purpose of the centralization the whole present system requires, so that needs to be taken out from that fora and becomes an executive responsibility of the finance ministry. What do you mean? This is cooperative federalism. What is cooperation? It is an executive authority will be much more dominant in the states meeting the financial need. Does it anywhere concept of cooperation exists?
So you are actually saying that instead of the fiscal federalism, cooperative federalism, it's actually centralizing
it is going to the executive hand, more arbitrariness. The minimum democratic exercise will be replaced by a much more arbitrariness and executive authority. How can you call it? You give it any name. If your policy is to do like that, but don't call it cooperative federalism, fiscal federalism. This is an utter hypocrisy.
We are joined in by Pavan Varma, Janata Dal-U MP. Pavan, Pavan, your party seems to have taken a position yesterday in the meeting. If you have heard what Mr. N.K. Singh said, that they are trying to, the attempt is to revamp the whole thing, bring in a whole lot of different existing organizations together and make it a more homogeneous unit. What is the opposition of your party to this?
Let me say to you, Girish, that the entire manner in which the Planning Commission has been handled after the new government came to power represents to the nation a strange doctrine of governance. First of all, you put the cart before the horse, and on a public platform you announce the termination of an institution which has existed for over 64 years. There is no process of consultation preceding that. There is an announcement, and the alternative is not yet ready, and several months elapse before the first process of consultation starts. The net consequence is that an existing institution is rendered moribund, whereas the alternative has not yet been formulated.
Right. Okay.
The correct way to do this, and I am willing to concede that the Planning Commission itself needs reform. Now, Girish, you've come to me last. Please allow me at least 30 seconds to speak.
Please continue.
My point is simple. There should have been in the proper manner, a National Defence Council National Development Council should have been convened.
National Development Council.
Should have been convened. The opinions of the Chief Minister should have been taken into account. The first draft of an alternative to the Planning Commission should have discussed, along with a paper which was seeking to reform the Planning Commission by certain dramatic or at least substantive changes to its functioning.
Right.
And along with that, very importantly, a new vision for cooperative federalism should have been spelt out. None of this has been done. We don't know what will happen when these allocatory powers are allocated to Ministry of Finance. We have seen no vision of a new form of cooperative federalism. We have the Planning Commission standing abolished by imperial decree from the ramparts of the Red Fort. We don't know what the alternative is being proposed. So it's very difficult to even engage in a debate on this.
Absolutely. Well,
certainly you can imbue this mythical new body with a lot of features, but I think a very valid question has been asked, why those same functions cannot be performed by a revamped Planning Commission.
Okay, I think Pavan, you made very, very important points. I have to get Mr. Singh. Mr. Singh, before I go to Paranjoy, Mr. Singh, would you like to react to that? Don't you think that they have a Pavan has a point, even the others, saying that the cart has been put before the horse? This whole process should have been the other way around.
Well, I'd just like to remind Bhalchandra, Mungekar and Pavan that perhaps they should look up the history books. That initially when the Planning Commission was set up, regrettably it was not set up by an Act of Parliament. It was set up by statutory order of the Cabinet Secretariat, which was not preceded by any consultation with any Chief Minister, much less the National Development Council. So the creation of the Planning Commission 64 years ago itself was done in a manner which did not give the Planning Commission any statutory basis whatsoever.
So is the same thing being continued now?
What has been done
is the same thing being continued now?
Not at all, because it was created by a statutory order.
Right.
It was abolished by a statutory order. It is in complete conformity because in the last 64 years, the governments in office did not find it necessary to put the Planning Commission by either an Act of Parliament, on which I have spoken in the Rajya Sabha repeatedly. The 12th plan, Bhalchandra Mungekar will recall.
Mr. Singh, my question is this.
On the 11th plan, the Parliament had not discussed the 11th plan even once.
Girish, I want to give a response.
Mr. Singh, sorry, 1 second, Pavan. Mr. Singh, are you trying to tell us that now the same procedure is being followed, what was done in 1950? One second thing, or are you saying that there's going to be an act of parliament?
Not at all. I think not at all.
Or is there going to be an act of parliament
just allow me,
Girish,
to complete this.
Yes.
That Yes, I believe that the constitution has only one provision which relates to center and the states in respect of consultation, and that constitutional provision is the creation of an interstate council.
Right.
And I think that the critical feature of the new body would be to act on the basis of what the constitution provides for, namely to strengthen the consultative process through reactivating the interstate council, to transfer the interstate council from the Ministry of Home Affairs to the Planning Commission with the Prime Minister as the head of the interstate council.
Okay, sir. I have I have to go to Paranjoy. Has been waiting for quite some time. Paranjoy, Paranjoy, how do you look at this? Now, you think that the government is going in the right direction of to create a new body?
Girish, first of all, let me thank you. After all my friends who with distinct political affiliations have spoken, you're giving me an opportunity.
You're the only non-political person.
That's correct. I see once again, it's a classic case of politics triumphing over economics. It's all very fine to say cooperative federalism. Very, very nice statements have been made. But let's look at the facts. As Pavan Varma rightly pointed out, there was a unilateral announcement made from the ramparts of Red Fort that the Planning Commission was going to be abolished altogether. And in fact, I do agree here with what the Bihar Chief Minister, Mr. Maji, said, that it seems that after you have decided what to do, you want the Chief Minister to give a rubber stamp on that decision.
Endorse.
Right. So you finally convene on the 7th of December a meeting of the Chief Minister. Some Chief Ministers stay away, and then you don't call it a National Development Council. But then and that meeting, it's predictably everybody is divided along political lines. Everybody and his brother says the Planning Commission needs to be reformed, restructured, call it what you like. But we don't really have the alternative. Once again, let me again just remind you of 2 or 3 things. Individual personalities have often mattered more than the institution.
Right.
And the classic case of that is the Planning Commission.
Right.
When statistician Dr. Prasanta Chandra Mahalanobis was appointed by Pandit Nehru as a member of the Planning Commission, his own cabinet colleagues felt envious. They described him as a super finance minister. Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia was very close to the then Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, and it was more than the fact that they both had light blue colored turbans. When Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister and Dr. Manmohan Singh was a member secretary of the Planning Commission, he derogatorily dismissed the members of the Planning Commission as a bunch of jokers. Now the point is, here we have a body. It's not a constitutional body. Where you should have a constitutional body, you don't have one. That's the Interstate Council. And you need a body which has to play some very, very important role. The Ministry of Finance can have a point of view. There could be another point of view. And it's very important sometimes to have this healthy differences of opinion on various policy issues between the Ministry of Finance, or for that matter, the Cabinet Secretariat and the Planning Commission. Secondly, you do need a body to coordinate and to resolve disputes between states, among states, among different departments of the government.
Right.
You have dozens of ministries and departments dealing with, say, energy, dealing with water, dealing with agriculture. You need coordinating functions. You need independent, advice which comes from people who are, experts. So you do need a planning commission. Call it by whatever name you like.
So
you
can
throw out the baby with the bath water, but you will somehow have to still get the baby back because somebody has to play these roles.
Nomenclature will keep that aside, whatever it is going to be called. But are you trying to say that the plan which Mr. N.K. Singh gave us right now, what it's going to be, gave us a hint of what it's going to be? Don't you think that will be will that not work as the right body in the present circumstances?
Once again, we don't know how it will work. Right now, we have a whole lot of suggestions coming in. We have a whole lot of nice statements of intent of what is supposed to be cooperative federalism. Everybody says, we don't want central programs where one size fits all. Everybody says, yes, we must have greater decentralization, greater fiscal federalism. We know all these things. But
there is no clarity. Are you trying to say there is no clarity?
Absolutely no clarity.
On what it's going to be?
Absolutely.
Very quickly, sir, we are running. Mr. Singh, would you agree that, as far as all the panelists here
to Mr. Singh?
Yes, Pavan, quickly.
Very briefly,
yes.
My senior and my friend Mr. Singh said that the Planning Commission was set up in the 50s by a statutory order. I want to say, do we take into account the experience, executive order? Do we take into account that 64 years have passed and the Planning Commission
Nobody
has
questioned
developed a niche of its own
Right.
as a consensual institution to resolve many issues between the center and the states? It may not be functioning to optimum levels.
So
But
what is the point?
Do we concede the fact that it has made a place for itself and cannot be just wished away by a fiat without an alternative before the nation?
Absolutely. Mr. Singh, would you agree that, as all my panelists have pointed out, there is no clarity on what the alternative is, but the body which has existed for 64 years has actually become moribund. So how long will this moribund state of affairs continue?
And Girish, what happens to the 12th plan? We are
What
bang in the
happens to the
middle of
12th?
it.
Yes, what
Well, I
happens
think
to the
that
12th plan?
I'm glad that you are
12th plan
using
has
the
to,
expression
12th plan,
that
sir,
for 64 years.
Sir, what happens to the 12th
I'm glad
plan?
that, Girish, I'm glad that you are agreeing that in 64 years the Planning Commission had become moribund. I'm glad
No,
that
no, I
there
didn't
is a
say
general
64 years.
acceptance
I
that
said
we
in the
need
last
to make
6
the
months.
states more participative.
Sir, I'm not saying in the
this is-
64 years it became
Girish.
moribund.
I'm glad that
In the last 6 months, it has become moribund since the time the new government came.
A
and-
lot of institutions and
ministers have
government
been
have
only
become
ma-
moribund, sir.
a lot of in the last 64
We
years
don't
the Planning
replace them
Commission
all by
failed
fiat.
to reflect the important
We reform
changes in
them.
the Indian economy, and I do believe
Girish, one
that these important functions which are expected of the states in terms of resolving differences between them
Sir, all that
needs
is-
a statutory body. That statutory body the Constitution is provided for. The Constitution recognizes only one statutory body.
Sir,
that is the Interstate
Girish,
Council,
one-
which
Sir,
has
okay,
hardly
sir.
been
Now, one
allowed to
minute,
function.
wait. No,
And I think one of the critical features of the new Planning Commission, the structure,
Okay,
would
we
be
will-
to give
sir, we
the
will say-
Interstate Council a statutory basis
Okay.
and to act on the basis of what the Constitution provides for.
Okay, very quickly, Dr. Mungekar.
First
Very
of all,
quickly. We have completely run out.
it is cooperative federalism is just a bogey to justify the decision. Second point, yesterday every chief minister was given 6 to 7 minutes. Third, there is no blueprint, there is nothing to be discussed exactly because there is no concrete tangible plan. Fourth, and once again I say that the Planning Commission was brought into executive order, it is the elementary thing in the development
That is-
economy. The question is Britain can have democracy for 500 years without written constitution.
written constitution.
Now 1 minute. Now the question
there
is,
is no timeline.
no, what I say is,
Give me
it,
one
it is very surprising that I was Planning Commission member, NK was Planning Commission member, and this thing did not occur to us when we were serving at the Planning Commission. My last point is, all the functions they are talking about now, they can be subsumed and performed in the basic possible matter in the
Very quickly,
Restructured
very
Planning
quickly.
Commission.
Very quickly, I believe
Well,
that
Bhalchandra,
whole-
it had occurred to us. It
If
had
we have
occurred
a
to you
vision
and
for
me
that-
both.
No, we
I believe
tried
that-
our own way. We tried our own way also.
Sir,
believe that-
Tapan, very quickly.
very quickly.
You
In few
remember
seconds.
Kishan Chand Pant set up a committee, Dr.
Sir, we are-
Manmohan Singh
we are
set up a
running out
committee.
of- we are
It had
running out
occurred
of
to
time,
us.
sir.
I mean,
I think we are giving, I feel a very danger whole democratic exercise in the economic policy making, and I think it will be extended to political
Okay.
policy making also. It is the boss told with scrap. Thereafter we are discovering logic behind it.
Okay.
That is the most
Paranjoy, one
unfortunate
word,
thing.
last
And-
last sentence to you.
I think Mr. Modi, if he genuinely believes in cooperative federalism, he has to develop a consensus. And that consensus can't be of the kind where you have a clear
Boss
division
fish.
along political lines.
Okay. I think on that
I mean,
note,
if he's the Prime Minister of India,
I
then
thi-
he has to build that consensus.
okay, I think we're completely right. Building consensus, such a major decision needs consensus to create a new body. Hopefully there will be more discussions, more debate and more
There is a
consultations,
lot of making consensus.
consultations with the states and
Consensus
different
was given a
stakeholders
go-by.
before a final decision is taken. Thanks to all my guests,
Should
Pavan
precede the
Varma,
decision, not follow
NK
it.
Singh, Bhalchandra, Mungekar, Tapan and Paranjoy, Guha, Thakurta. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in Big Picture same time tomorrow.